Hello, I'm going to discuss a topic today that it's very close to my heart, and I believe it is very close to the heart of many people when we look at the problems that we are facing in this country, in this part of the world, and in this country in particular. When we look at the unemployment, there are a lot of people who are unemployed, and this is causing a lot of heartache. There's a lot of insecurity. There's high inflation. There's a falling currency. And there's what you might call a cocktail of events that have made life not so pleasant for the wider and greater majority of the society. Now we are hearing that some people are committing suicide, and unfortunately, a large number of people have left the country, and even a larger number of people are looking for every opportunity to exit the country. There has been a huge loss to brain drain. That is our best hands. A lot of doctors, engineers, lawyers, teachers, lecturers, several skilled people have left the country, and many much more are even trying to leave. And all these are signs of the fact that things are not, life is very hard for people in this country, and, things are not pleasant for a lot of people. However, we must be able to make sense of the whole thing. We must be able to understand what is going on, so that, because it is when you understand something that you can solve it. No matter how hard a problem is, once you understand it, then you will be able to solve it. That is why, in various disciplines, there's always a lot of research that goes into it, because research is one of the pathways that you take to understand something. So when you understand something, then you will be able to solve it. But if you don't understand it, it's very difficult to solve it. So whatever problems Nigeria as a country might be going through and facing, the first step to solving whatever the problems are is to understand. You understand? It is to understand the issues. Once we understand the issues, then it will be clear. Then it will be easy to solve them. So I want to touch on one of the a major issue, something that is fundamental. That if things are going to change for the better, if life will be pleasant for people in this nation, if things will take a complete turnaround, whereby we will have a situation whereby people are trying to come in. That is not only Nigerians now, but even other nationals are trying, you understand, in their thousands to come in, because there are nations like that. There are nations in the world that people in their thousands and even millions are trying to go there. You understand? That people are trying to go there. So it is possible. Now, if we are going to turn things around, whereby people are trying to come here, people are trying to stay here, then we have to understand what the issues are. Once we understand what the issues are, then we will be able to take the necessary steps. You understand? To make it as that. Because life is not magic. Life is not magic. What is available to one nation generally is available to all. Once you understand, the success, the peace, the progress, you understand, that is available in certain nations, or that prevails or exists in certain nations, is available to others that don't have it. It's a matter of understanding the issues. There's no problem that we might be going through in the country that cannot be solved, as long as we understand what the problem is, as long as we understand what the issues are, and then we sincerely go about solving those problems, you understand, or handling those issues. So I want to deal with something that is fundamental. What I want to talk about is something that I call it fundamental. It's foundational. In essence, if you ignore it, when something is fundamental, there's no way, there's no going around it. You have to address it. It's like the foundation of a house. You don't have a house until you first have a foundation. No matter how beautiful the windows or doors are, or you might have mapped out the kind of roofing you want to use for it. It might be the best roofing material in the world. You might have thought that, okay, we're going to use the best windows and the best tiles, and you might even want to use gold taps in the bathroom and all that. All that will amount to nothing if you don't have a foundation to hold it. So the foundation of something is very important. So when people are trying to exit a certain country because of the difficulties and the problems, because of the unpleasantness and the stress and all the issues going on there, and they say they want to go to a certain country where life is much better, then it's important that we understand that where they are going, it's not by magic that they have it. It's not by magic. And what is over there is possible over here. What is over there is, you understand, is available also here, once we understand the issues. So we want to look at something fundamental. Now, what I'm going to talk about is from the Bible. But it is not religious. And if you are going to understand and follow me on what I'm talking about today, you must not look at it from a religious perspective. Because if you look at it from a religious perspective, there is every likelihood that you will miss the point. Because, you see, there are a lot of things that are in the Bible that are not religious, essentially. So we want to look at something from the scriptures, but not from a religious perspective, so that we can maintain the point we are trying to make. And you will see that what we are talking about is not religious, but it makes for life. There are a lot of things in the Bible that we are meant to look at from a practical life standpoint and not from a religious standpoint. So what we are going to look at is something that we must look not from a religious standpoint. And you will see that the context of it is not religious. There is a certain prediction that was made by a man, what I would call the prediction of nations. It was made long time ago by a man called Solomon. Solomon was a king, but I want us to bring it into 21st century settings so that we can understand better. Solomon, in those days, they had kings. In this day, we have prime ministers or presidents, things like that. So if Solomon was in our day, Solomon will either be the president of a country, which was Israel in that day, or he will be a prime minister. Because essentially, he was the head of government. Solomon was the head of the government of his day. So if we are going to understand it, we have to understand it properly. No, don't look at it religiously. Solomon essentially was like a prime minister or a president. He was a head of government. So, I'm going to read something from 1 Kings, chapter 10, verse 23. It says, "So King Solomon surpassed all the kings of the earth in riches and wisdom." So if we are going to look at it in your day and my day, it would be said that Solomon surpassed all other presidents or prime ministers in riches and in what? Wisdom. Which means that his country, Israel, then was richer than all nations. And then secondly, he was wiser. You understand? He was wiser than all other presidents or prime ministers. That's what it means. In those days, we all know they had kings. Kings formed the heads of government in that day. So, but if we are to bring it in today, you understand, we have presidents, prime ministers, and so on and so forth. That is what we are talking about. So, when we talk about Solomon and all the other kings of the earth there, we are talking about nations. We are talking about governments. So, as presidents today relate with other presidents of the world, that was how the kings related then. So, I want you to get what is going on here. Just like today, you will hear that the president of the United Kingdom traveled and went to go and have a meeting with the president of United States, and then all the presidents met. They had a G20 or G12 or whatever, and presidents will come together. That was how it was in their day. These kings will come together. You understand? As nations, as you have NATO, you have different alliances for protection and for security and protection. Against wars and things like that. That was how it was in those days too. So you will see countries that they formed alliances, you understand, to protect themselves, you understand, militarily, and so on and so forth, just as we have today. Just as you see United Nations and countries coming together and all that, that was how it was in their day too. So you must get it. That, what we are talking about here, we are not looking at it primarily from a religious standpoint. So, in his day, you understand, Solomon, just like in our day now, we have certain countries that their presidents, you understand, stand and seem to have a more prominent position. They will say this country, this president is the leader of the free world, and so it was just like that. So Solomon in his time, amongst presidents and prime ministers, he had the preeminence. Just like certain countries today now have, you understand, the strongest, biggest economies. That was what they were talking about. That he was richer, you understand, than all the other kings, and he was wiser. So we are talking about nations. We are not talking really, we are talking about countries. Now, in verse 24, it now continues and says, that is 1 Kings 10:24. It now continues and says, "Now all the earth sought the presence of Solomon to hear his wisdom, which God had put in his heart." Get it? He says, all the earth. I remember in verse 23, I had said he surpassed all kings in wisdom and in riches. So when he says all the earth sought the presence of Solomon, he was talking about kings. He was talking about prime ministers. He was talking about presidents. Just like we have it today, that different heads of states of different countries tend to go to certain other countries either for help, for, strategic alliances and everything, and so on and so forth. They go to other countries, maybe for loans and, assistance and everything. That was how it was. So Solomon had the preeminence, and we are told here that all the earth sought his presence. They sought his audience. It wasn't religious. Remember that all the earth, you understand, when it says they sought his presence, these were state affairs. You understand? These were not religious meetings. That's why I'm saying that it's not something that what we want to look at today is we must look at it from a religious standpoint, or else we might miss the point. These were state visits. You understand? These were state visits. These weren't religious meetings. All these kings we are talking about, remember, they were not practicing Judaism. You understand? They were not practicing Judaism. So these were not church meetings. These were not religious gatherings. These were state functions. These were state meetings where kings, you understand? In fact, if you read if you read before that, you will read of where the head of state of the nation of Ethiopia went also to go and see Solomon, who we know then was a lady, you understand, by the name of Queen what? Sheba. So it is just like saying the Prime Minister of Germany, who is a lady now, you understand, or of Australia, who is a lady now, you understand, goes to go and visit another head of state somewhere else. So just as we have female heads of state now, they had female heads of state then. So these were state visits. These were state visits. These were not religious meetings. So we want to investigate and see what were they talking about and what were they saying. The reason is because they went there not for religious purposes. They went there, you understand, for state matters. There are things they went to go and, you understand, why? Because Israel was a prosperous, successful, rich, prosperous country. It was a peaceful country, a strong country. You understand? Militarily, financially, everything was going on perfect there. So other nations went they went there because of what was happening. They went there because of the prosperity of those countries, of that country. They went there, you understand, to find out, how they could make their own countries better. How things could also be better for their own citizens. How their own nations could also prosper, you understand, and go forward. That's why they were going there. They were not going there, you understand, to clap their hands. You understand me? They were not going there primarily. Now, it is possible that some, when they went there, they also, also now saw the religious side, how they worshiped God and all that. But they went there primarily for the cause of their states and their nations. They said they went there. In fact, one translation says they went there to drink of the cup of Solomon's wisdom. That there were things that he knew which formed policies in Israel. You understand? Policies, state policies that they went to go and learn and then go back to their own countries to implement those things for the peace and prosperity of their countries. So, verse 24 says, now all the earth sought the presence of Solomon to hear his wisdom, which God had put in his heart. So this wisdom, you see, and it, like I said, this wisdom was what was used to form state policies. To form state policies for the peace, progress, and prosperity of those nations and their people, as they saw in Israel. So they went to go and learn. Exactly, that's it. They went to learn. They sought his audience. In fact, if you read further down, if you read in chapter 10, when he spoke about when the queen of Sheba went there. She went there to go and ask him hard questions. That how do you solve this? How do you solve that? How do you handle this? How do you tackle this? How do you do that? And the Bible tells us that there was nothing that she asked for, that there was no question that she asked him that Solomon, you understand? Yes, that Solomon could not answer. In that chapter 10, it says, she came to test him with hard questions. Verse 2, she came to Jerusalem with a very great retinue, with camels that bore spices, very much gold and precious stones, and so on and so forth. She spoke with him about all that was in her heart. You see there? These were state visits. She came, you understand, with a whole array of government officials that came with her. So these were state visits. These were not religious meetings. They were state visits. She came with a whole team of government officials. And she came to ask him what? The Bible says hard questions. That how do you solve this thing? How do you solve this problem? So if there was unemployment in our country, she would ask, how do you solve this? You understand? How do you solve her currency problems? You understand? If they had issues with food, how do you solve that? How do you solve this social unrest? How do you solve this? How do you solve it? She came with hard questions. And she came with a retinue of officials, government officials. So they will have state meetings. You understand? So these meetings, when they came, these were not religious meetings. These were strategic, you understand? These were strategy meetings. These were meetings on government policies. There were meetings on government policies. On how, to solve national issues, national problems. That's why they came. And so did other government officials and other heads of state from all over the world. Hearing of his fame and his wisdom, the Bible says they came to Jerusalem to seek his audience. You understand? And to hear what he had to say. We want to look at today at one of the things he told those people when they came. You understand what I'm saying? Now we have said those that came, these were official government meetings. So there were several things that he told them about government. You understand? About how to make your country, progress. How to make your country strong. How to move ahead. Different policies that were meant to be implemented. Things that, so business people will come to him. Successful traders and everyone will come to him. And he will tell them things. And during that time, Solomon, there's one thing that Solomon did, which I will call the prediction of nations. In the midst of his talking to them and during all this period, Solomon predicted the destiny of nations. Yes. He predicted the destiny of nations. Because as it is today, there's nothing new under the sun. Amen? So was it in that time. Just as we have it today, so was it during his time. And that was why nations came to him. Why? Because some nations, just as we have it today, some nations, as we have it today, so was it during his time. Some nations were rich. Some nations were prosperous. Some nations were very strong militarily. Some nations were self-sufficient. You understand? They could feed themselves and so on. Some nations during that time, so to say, you understand, would have good currencies. Some had very weak currencies. You understand? Some nations, they were peaceful. Some nations, there was a lot of social unrest. You understand? Some nations during that time were doing very well. Some were doing very badly. Just as it is today. There's nothing new under the sun. Some nations were prosperous during his time. You understand? Some nations were poor during his time. Just as it is today. In that time, Israel was a nation to be. There was peace. There was prosperity. You understand? You know, you would go to Israel and your career and your life would flourish. Things would go well. Your potentials will be achieved, will be realized, and so on and so forth. So that if you understand, if you are to bring the day of Solomon into today, it will be a fantastic nation. So you will have fantastic healthcare, great infrastructure, you understand, great educational institutions, you understand, a strong currency, peaceful society, strong military establishment, and so on and so forth. You understand? Food security and so on. So, these were state visits, as I said. So, there's something that he did then, like I said, that can be described as the prediction of nations, where Solomon predicted the destiny of nations. He predicted it. This was thousands of years ago, but he predicted the destiny of nations. How nations will be and how nations will turn out. And we want to look at one of that today. But like I said, this is nothing religious, so to say. In Proverbs chapter 14, there's something that he said there that I want us to look at. And we see it in verse 34. I will read the New King James Version. Then I will read some other versions that I've written out that are not, because you know the King James, when we read it, it easily puts on a religious toga on it, so to say. But we'll read the New King James, and then I will read some other more contemporary translations, so we can get the point. This is one of the things that Solomon told those heads of state, people, business leaders, you understand, leaders in that day, and anybody who was available to hear and listen. This is one of the things that presidents, prime ministers in his day, who were then kings, this is one of the things that he told them. When they said all the earth sought his audience to drink of his wisdom, this is one of the fundamental things. When it comes to nation building, when it comes to the destiny of a nation, in essence, whether that nation will be good or bad, whether that nation will be prosperous or not, whether that nation will be advanced or not, whether the people of that nation, you understand, will be at peace or not, whether the people of those nations will have honor and respect or not, whether that nation, you understand, will be self-sufficient or not, whether that nation, you understand, will be strong militarily or not, whether that nation, you understand, will prosper or not. The destiny, he penned it out in one statement. It is fundamental. There's no going around it. We see it in Proverbs chapter 14 and verse 34. He said, righteousness exalts a nation. He said, but sin is a reproach to any people. It's fundamental. He said to any people. That means that this law holds globally. Kings from the north, south, east, and west came. This is what he told them. That regardless of your people, regardless of where you are, regardless of where you are coming from, black, white, yellow, green, whatever, he said there is one thing that will lift a nation. He said it is righteousness. He said, but sin will be a reproach to any nation or any people on the earth, regardless of where they are. Look at this translation. By righteousness, a nation is lifted up. The same thing. By righteousness, a nation is lifted up. But sin is a cause of shame to the people. That sin, it brings shame to people. And of course, you know he's talking about nations here. So he's saying sin is what brings shame to a nation. That means that when a nation is not honored and respected and occupies a place of honor on the global stage, he says it's sin that causes it. Or a lack of righteousness that causes it. Look at another translation. This is the easy English, very contemporary, modern day English translation. It says, a country becomes great when it does right things. A country becomes great when it does right things. A country. But sin makes its people ashamed. Its people. So we are talking, so you can see when these people came to Solomon, these were not religious meetings. These were state meetings. These were policy strategic meetings on nation building. This is what they were talking about. That a country becomes great is not magic. It's not magic. A country, and in essence, its people, becomes great when it does right things. He said, but if they leave that aside, he said, sin makes its people ashamed. Another translation, International Standard Version. Righteousness makes a nation great. Righteousness. It makes a nation great. But sin, it diminishes any people. These are serious matters. He said sin, it diminishes any people. Any people. There's no going around it. You ignore it to your own peril. He said sin diminishes any people. So you can see he's not talking about even individuals here now. He's talking about nations. He's talking about countries. He's addressing states. Then final translation here. Righteousness exalts a nation. This is the New English translation. Righteousness exalts a nation. But sin is a disgrace to any people. That if any nation is going to, if you understand, if any nation is going to be disgraced, it is sin that will bring it. And that if any nation is going to be respected and honored, it is doing the right thing that will cause it. This is one of the, you understand, the secrets of nation building and statehood. That's when they came to see him. These are the policies that he said you have to implement. That righteousness, and of course, we have to understand what we are talking about. When he said righteousness, righteousness is a religious word, but it is practical in its application. When, of course, I had to go and recheck the literal translation of that word, righteousness, so that we don't get it wrong. It means rightness. That's what is there. That which is, it means, the translation says rightness. Then it says to be or make right. It's not any spiritual word floating in the air. It's day-to-day practical. That which is right. It says rightness. To be or make something right. Then it also describes it as just. It's the same word. Righteousness, justice, or just. The same word. Doing what is right. Making something right. Doing something the right way. Solomon said that is what exalts or lifts a nation. Failure to do that, he says, what will follow is shame, disgrace, diminishing. He said that's what causes people to go down. So it is righteousness that exalts a nation, and this is not religious. We must understand that. Why? Because you can be religious and not do what is right. So what lifts a nation and its people, you understand, is the culture of rightness. The culture, you understand, of doing what is right. That is what lifts a nation and its people. Note, it didn't say religion, you understand, exalts a nation. Because you can be religious. You understand? Because you can be religious, yet not practice righteousness. You understand? You can be religious, but not practice righteousness. So, you understand? So it is possible to be in a place where there is a lot of religion, okay, and little right doing. You understand? Even our Lord Jesus Christ showed that during his day. The Pharisees were religious. You understand? Remember, the Pharisees were the most religious people, but they were the least righteous people. You understand? That means, you understand? In fact, they were the ones that organized the death of Jesus Christ. Even to the point that they were willing to pay somebody to do it, to kill an innocent man. They brought out money, you understand, to pay, you understand, for his assassination. But they were very religious people. So it is possible to be religious and yet not practice righteousness. And that was what Solomon was telling these people here. That righteousness exalts a nation, not religion. Religion doesn't exalt. You understand? He knew what he was saying there. These were world leaders coming from all over the world. They were not even practicing the religion that he was practicing. You understand? But he was telling them that if you want to be exalted, okay? If you want to be elevated as a nation and as a people, it is righteousness that will do it. That is embracing the culture, you understand? You understand? Of doing what is right. And we must note that it will lift a nation. As it lifts a nation, as this practice will lift a nation, so will it lift an individual. Because it is many individuals that make a nation. So Solomon pointed it out very clear to them that righteousness exalts a nation. Wow. Like we saw in the Easy English, that a country becomes great when it does right things. So there are things that are right that make a country great. And there are things that are right that will make an individual great. It's inevitable. It's inevitable. He said a nation will become great if it does the right things. So when you see a group of people saying, oh, I want to travel out, I want to travel out, I want to move out of this country is hard, things are bad, and so on and so forth, that I want to go to this country, I want to go to that country, what they are saying is that they want to go to a place where things are done right. That's what they are saying. That's what they are saying. That if there is a country that you get to, a nation that you enter, where there's 24 hours electricity, there's pipe-borne water running in every home. You go to the hospital, drugs are there. You go to the hospital, everywhere is equipped. You go to the clinic, everything is there. You are treated well. You are served well. You go to their schools, perfect. You go to the universities, no strike. Everything is going on fine. You go to their roads, no pothole. Everything is working perfectly. Solomon said, the Bible is saying that it is righteousness that made it like that. The culture of doing what is right, not magic. Note, the culture of doing what is right, not the culture of religion. Because if you check data, all these countries that people are running to, they are the least religious. Further emphasizing what Solomon is saying here, that it is righteousness that lifts a country. It is righteousness doing right things that makes those countries great, and not religion. So likewise, you can get to a place whereby everywhere you turn is religion. You turn here religion, you turn here religion, you turn here religion, you turn here religion, you turn here religion. Ask yourself, is that place great? If it is not great, they are not practicing what is right. Period. That's it. That is what it means. That if you turn, every angle you turn, you see religion, 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 no problem. Ask yourself the question, is this place a great nation? Is it a great place where everybody is trying to come in? Everybody wants to associate with? Everybody wants to live there? Or is it people are bailing out, trying to find their way out? Is it great or not? If it is not great, is the currency strong? How many times, how many of that currency do you need to count before you can get one of another country? Then you start to ask whether this is a great place or not. That they have attained to greatness or not. So you have to separate religion, you understand, from righteousness, so that you can see clearly. Where there is right doing, it is greatness that follows it. Righteousness results in greatness. That's what the Bible is telling us. Not religion. Our Lord showed us in the Bible clearly, you can be religious, yet you have no desire for that which is right. You can be very religious, but you don't do what is right. Be it as a nation or as a people. But the Bible lets us know into the secret here that if you want to be great, it is doing what is right that leads to it. The practice and the culture of righteousness. And we must understand, sir, we don't look at the word righteousness as a religious word. No. The interpretation means to do what is what? Right. That's what it means. That is why you can go to many developed nations. They are not religious. You will sweat before you see a church. You will sweat before you see a place of worship. But everything is going on. There is greatness there. You will see the greatness even from the sky. Before you land, you will see the greatness. And when you land there, you will experience the greatness in every day. Yet, you will sweat before you see any act of religion there. Because Solomon himself said it, that it is doing what is right. What? That makes a country great. It is righteousness that makes a country great. And there's a very important point there. Also there, what that means. Also note, another thing that he did not say. He did not say natural resources exalt a nation. That's another thing you should note. You understand? Because there are people that think that our problem started when the price of crude oil fell. That is not where the problem started. You understand? He said, he did not say natural resources exalt a nation. Though if you have a lot of oil, a lot of gas, a lot of gold, you'll be great. No. He said righteousness. He said, even if you don't have one drop of any natural resource in your ground, that if you do what is right, you will become great. And that is why you will see that even when that is why regardless of how high the price of, for example, crude oil may go. Many nations that have it have not gone high with it. That if you check their history, you understand, they have been drilling this oil for decades. They have been selling it for decades. Yet when you look there, you see bad roads. I mean, after all the decades of drilling the oil, people still want to bail out because of the difficulty, because of the hardship, because of the challenges. You understand? Where people want to go because there's no light. People want to go, some businesses close down and move to other countries. You understand? People want to get health care. Those that can afford it have to travel out of country to go and get the health care. People want to get good education. Those that can afford it have to go out of the country to go to the best schools. You understand? Everything that they eat, they drink, they wear, they have to import it and bring it in. You understand? Which means that if they didn't bring those things in, they will not have at all. Yet they have been drilling the oil for decades to show you that it is not natural resources that lift a nation. You understand? It is doing what is right. So even if the barrel of crude oil goes to $1,000 a barrel, it will make no difference. Because the more money that comes in, the more unrighteous way will it be handled, and it therefore will amount to nothing. So the difference is this, and that is why you will see that countries that don't have as much natural resources, you understand, but do what is right, they end up great and better than countries that have plenty natural resources but don't do what is right. Proving, testifying to what Solomon was saying by the Spirit of God, that it is righteousness that exalts a nation. If nations were exalted by natural resources, many of the countries that are great today will not be great. And many of the countries that are not great today will be great. But it is not that that makes a country great. It is the culture. It's a culture. The culture of doing what is right as a nation, as a people. That is what makes a country great. That is what lifts a country. Which means that the country can go any way it wants to go. If it doesn't come to that point of saying, okay, we have to start doing what is right, that country is not going anywhere. No matter how much it earns, even if oil becomes $5,000 one barrel, you will look for that money in that country, you will not see it. You will look for it, even as you are looking for it now, and you cannot say, you understand that? I mean, you ask yourself, where is all the money of all these decades? And your roads are still like this. Your schools are like this. Your people are like this. Where is all the money? Why? Because the more money that comes in, more is the unrighteousness that handles it. And no matter how much money is on ground, if unrighteousness is handling it, it will come to nothing. Hence, Solomon said, it is righteousness, the culture of the people doing what is right, that exalts a nation. So that even if it is little that they have, once righteousness is handling it, greatness will come out of it. That's it. No matter how little it is, if righteousness is handling it, greatness will come out of it. So that if righteousness is handling little, it becomes much. If unrighteousness is handling much, it becomes what? Little. You understand? You will be hearing the figures, hearing the money like this. You will not see it in the lives of the people. Wretchedness, poverty, suffering. You understand? You will not see it at all. Why? Because it is the culture of doing what is right that lifts a nation, that lifts a people. So evil is not a matter of resources at all. So they say, oh, let us start mining this. Let us start mining that. Let us start extracting this. Let us start selling that. It's good. But know that it will amount to nothing as long as righteousness, the culture of doing what is right, as long as it's not in place. Earn how much money you want to earn. You will look for it like this, you will not see it. Nations that don't have 10% of what you have, they will still be doing better. Nations that don't have 5% of what you have, your citizens will be begging for visas to go to those countries. They will be begging. They will be begging for visas to go to those countries. Countries that don't have 5% of what you have. Your citizens will be begging. They will risk their lives over the sea. You understand? To get to those countries. Your people will be selling all their possessions just to get a visa to go to those countries. Yet, those countries where they are going to, they do not have natural resources. 5% of what you have. Because it is not resources that exalt a nation. It is righteousness, the culture of doing what is right. That is what lifts a nation. That is what lifts a country. That is what lifts a nation. So, when we understand these are things that Solomon discussed, you understand, with presidents, heads of states that came with their government officials, like the Queen of Sheba, a whole retinue of people came to come and see Solomon. These are the things that he told them. Because they will come to his country, Israel then. They will see how everything is beautiful, how everything is going well, how the people are at peace, how the people are eating well, how the people are living and everything. Solomon, how do you do it? He will tell them. It's righteousness that exalts a nation. But that sin, the Bible says, is a disgrace to any people. So he will tell them, when you get back to your country, go and be doing righteousness there. Do what is right. That if you do what is right, your countries too will be okay like my country here. That's what we're telling them. That when you get back to your nation, put in policies that are just, policies that are right. That if you do that, your nations too will be great. That nation building is not magic. You understand? Nation building, to make a country, you understand? To make a country great is not magic. To make a country great, you understand, is not a mystery. You understand? It's not a mystery. It's not something that is so difficult. Oh, in this part of the world. Oh, this or that. No. It's not a mystery. There are principles that you can follow that will make your country great, and those principles are available to everybody. Yes, they are available to everybody. Yes. So if you go to a country now, you ask a country, how much is your own currency to their own currency? They say it is their currency and your currency is 1 to 350. You understand? You know what that means? That means when you say, oh, you want to get a certain currency and your currency is 1, and they say it's 1 to 350 or 1 to 4 something. You know what that means? What that means in the light of this scripture is this. When the scripture says righteousness exalts a nation, sin is a reproach or disgrace to any people. What it means in terms of currency is this. That they have done, for you to get one unit of their own currency, if you have to count 350 of your own, or you have to count 420 of your own to get one of them, it means that they have done 420 things right that you have not done. That's why, to get one of their own, you have to count 400 of your own to get it. That's what it means. That means that there is something that you are meant to have done that you didn't do. The consequence of that is that you have to count so many of your own. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. You get to 100, you are still going. 120, 130, 140, 150, you are still going. 200, 210, 250, 270, you are still going. 300, 310, 320, you are still going. You understand? You get to 410, 420, you are still going. To just get one of their own currency. Just to get one of their own. That tells you there are 400 and something things that you need to go and do right. That's what he's telling you. If you counted 350, that means there are 300 and something things you need to go and do right. It's not magic. In essence, there are things that you can do. Your currency too, you understand, will move up. That's what it means. That there are things you can do. That their currency is like that because probably it is showing you the number of things they have done right that you have not, that you have refused to do. Because nobody said you shouldn't do them. The only reason why you haven't done them, you have refused to do them. And life is now holding you what? Accountable. That this nation, they have done these things. You have refused to do. Therefore, you will count. Oh yeah, keep counting. Keep counting. Keep counting. Keep counting. To get one of their own. Do the right things. You understand? And you will see the right results. Because 1 + 1 in the West is 2. It cannot become 1.5 elsewhere. Amen? Yeah. 1 + 1. If they say it's 2 there, if you count it right in your country, it also be what? 2. It's simple. So there are things that result in a country, and as we said, this applies to a nation, it applies to an individual. So even the person, you understand, that refuses to do what is right here, even if he goes to another country, if he does not do what is right there, he cannot exalt. He cannot be lifted. There's no magic. Yes, that is it. Yes. The only reason why he will be, you understand, why things will get better for him wherever he goes, is that when he gets there, he joins the queue and does what is right. There's no magic. The only advantage you will have over there than over here is that maybe he's now in an environment whereby an environment that encourages him to do what is right. You understand? And creates the platform for him or her to do what is right, that he can move up. That will be the best he can get as an advantage over where he's coming from. So, these are the things that we have to address, because truly things are very tough for people. For a lot of people, things are very tough. They have been saying it even globally. They have now said it that the level of poverty and difficulty in the country is really bad. And we have to start to ask ourselves, how do we get out of this? And how do we solve this problem? And my concern today is that we had better, you understand, we had better address the issue from its roots so that they can be truly solved. Because there are several things that can cause a headache, of which you can use a painkiller for. That does not mean it has solved the root of the problem. You understand? You can give a painkiller or an analgesic just to relieve the pain temporarily. But if the headache is coming, you understand, from example, high blood pressure, you understand, you can only give that just temporarily. You have to go and solve, you understand. If the person is having a headache because maybe the person's eyesight, you understand, is not too good and the person needs to either get glasses or change glasses. If you give a painkiller, after that 3 hours it will wear away, 2 hours it will wear away, the headache will come back. Why? Because you have not addressed the eyesight that is having a problem that is causing the headache. So even in our process of trying to solve the problems of the country, you understand, we must understand that we have to go to the fundamentals, or else we are just applying temporal painkillers, of which the problem, once the painkiller wears off, the problem will re-establish itself. And sometimes if care is not taken, even cause more problems. So we'll talk more about this, but let us remember that. So don't be discouraged. When you hear the culture, when you hear the word righteousness, when you hear the culture of doing what is right, know that it is going to pay you. It will benefit you. It is what makes people great. It is what makes nations great. The culture of doing what is right. The culture and attitude of rightness. Especially because in this environment where doing right is laughed at. People will laugh at you that you are dull. You understand? You are slow. You are not smart. You understand? And all those kind of things that, it is the unrighteous way that pays. It is the unrighteous, the attitude and culture of doing what is wrong is what is right, is what pays, is what is fast, is what gets results. But don't be deceived. Do not be deceived. Whatever you see from it is temporal, is brief. It is what is right that lasts. And it is what is right that ultimately exalts. God bless you.